Welcome back to another episode of the game which still has no name. It's gonna be amazing. Oh, it's such a horrible intro, but it doesn't matter. Let's jump into the game, everyone. And let's talk about the changes. So first of all, I've rebalanced all the stats. And I will probably rebalance them many times more, because now we're going into the phase where I'm trying to make the game fun to play, kind of. I'm trying to make combat work. That's going to be the goal for the coming weeks or months or however long this is gonna take. The thing is, combat right now, it sucks. It sucks so much for a couple of reasons. I've made a couple of like quick changes, quick fixes, which helped a little bit, but it still didn't solve the issue. So we're gonna talk about everything that needs to be done. There's a lot that needs to be done, I think, to get combat to feel good. So first of all, as you can see, I've raised all the stats on the character. So you start off with more HP, more mana, more essentially everything. And that's because I had a problem before where I couldn't add, if I added one armor, since you have so many armor pieces, just getting one armor, since one armor mitigates one damage, it meant that you could easily assemble enough armor pieces so that you took no damage from the early enemies here. And that wasn't really the case. So that wasn't really the plan. There's English, I know, I will try to speak better English, but now I use Russian voices. So that's why I raised all the stats on the character. Also, if we go into the character panel here, you will see a couple of changes here. I've added more stats, base stats on the character. So you have health and mana, and we have some starting equipment. That's just because I'm testing stuffs right now. So I always want to have a weapon when I try out combat, so I always start off with the basic, lowest, simplest weapon, which also has of course more weapon damage than it did before, because I've raised all the stats, as I said. And then you start off with a belt and a bag, so I have somewhere to put stuffs, and I still haven't fixed the issue where these don't shrink when, like, there's a lot of empty space here. That doesn't look that good. And also these items are probably gonna have more stats, but I'm making it very simple for now. The stats are very, very simple right now, just because I want to get like the basic balance down in combat, make the basics work, and then I can add on some stuffs like life leech and mana leech. There's going to be items. Maybe I added some items with life leech and mana leech, but I don't think there are any right now. Maybe one or two. No, not too many. So I added some stats here. As I said, I've added life leech and mana leech. I've also added a thing called faith, which you can get. And faith is a stat. Okay, so how do I explain this? The problem now in combat, I can show you what's gonna happen when we get into combat. Let's fight one dude. I think there's gonna be one dude. Oh, by the way, you can see the room inside here is darker. That's because now there's a fog of war in the game. So you can even see the corners here. Very difficult to see, but these corners here are darker now because I can't see into the corners. And later on, I haven't implemented this, enemies that are inside of the fog of war won't be visible to you. Then of course, if you move closer, these things are gonna go away, and of course you're gonna be able to see. I can't see in this corner now, but if I walk up here, I will be able to see into that corner. And same too, I'm not able to see inside of this room. I can still see the shapes and everything, and the lamps and everything, but I don't know exactly what's in there, because that's the idea behind Fog of War, that you don't know what's inside. And that's very important, because before with combat, one of the reasons that combat was so boring, I know I'm getting off on a complete tangent and I didn't finish the last thing I was talking about, but anyways, the reason that combat was so boring, and still is really boring, is that it wasn't random before. Now it's a little bit random. So I had no randomness before, but now I've added randomness. So we can have a look at the stats here on the Berserker. That's damage 35, accuracy 80%, so it's gonna miss from time to time. So before, essentially, since you saw everyone, there was no fog of war, and since you know how much damage they dealt and how much damage you dealt all the time, you could essentially just bring out a calculator and know exactly what was gonna happen in every fight. And I don't think that's very good. So there needs to be a little bit of an element of randomness. So I put accuracy, crit, dodge, resistance, and fumble on these guys. And that's because I didn't want to put them on the character, because that would just be so many stats on the character to start off with. So I'm trying a thing where I put these stats, all the randomness, on the enemies. I'll see how that works out. Maybe I'll move it back to, or have it on the character instead, but I think it's a little bit interesting system. So Accuracy, of course, is how likely it is to hit. 20% chance that it misses its attacks. It has a crit chance of 5%, which means that if it crits, it deals double damage, but only a 5% chance for that to happen. It has a dodge chance of 15%, which means that if we attack this guy, he has a 50% chance to not take any damage. He has a 50% resistance chance, which means that he takes half the damage in 15% of the cases. And then it has a fumble chance, 15%, which has two effects. So first of all, if the enemy fumbles, it means that if you attack it, you're gonna deal double damage against it, and if it attacks you, it's gonna deal half damage. That makes it more difficult to calculate what's gonna happen in combat. It makes it seem a little bit more random, but still you kind of have an idea what's gonna happen. So I think the system is kind of good for now. But as you can see, we see these characters even though they are inside the Fog of War, and that's not gonna be the case later on. Also, the combat is very boring because essentially every fight that you encounter, because these enemies are just randomly put in every room, you just fight one guy, and it's just essentially you click one guy until it disappears. So the interesting combat dynamics, I think, are gonna appear when there are multiple enemies on the screen, and you have to decide who do I fight first, and should I run away from that guy and stuff like that. So I think that also the abilities suck. Everything about the combat system that I implemented sucks. But we're slowly getting to a system, I think, which works. So the abilities, the problem with abilities on all these characters are you can move and attack in the same turn, which is kind of good because it prevents you from running away from it. But there's no reason to ever run away from this guy because he's always gonna be alone with like 99% certainty. So his ability doesn't matter. So instead what I want these guys to have is abilities which makes you take different, like if they do something, you will have to respond and so on. A little bit of a back and forth between you and the enemies. So instead of having an ability like this, kind of move and attack in the same turn, it might have ability like a charge up attack, for instance. It shows exactly where it's gonna attack, on what square it's gonna attack. It's gonna be on that square, and then you have to move away from that square, or you're gonna take all damage from that attack, and maybe that attack is 3 times as strong or something like that. So that makes it a little bit more interesting, because then you have the choice of either move away or attack. And if there's multiple enemies, they can have abilities like, for instance, there might be a skeleton mage which resurrects, or a necromancer which like resurrects other skeletons. So you probably want to focus him down first if you can, but maybe you have to kill one skeleton to be able to get to him because they're blocking the path or something like that. So more interesting abilities needs to be there. We can fight this guy and see another problem. Second, I think this is like the 10th problem that we're at right now. This guy uses the same animation as the character that we're playing as, and that's just not good, honestly. This guy uses the same animation. It just looks so samey. So these guys, of course, have to have different animations. That's the next thing. Number 11. Okay, so we both missed it. That was a little bit interesting. Okay, he missed and I dealt 50 damage. Next thing is that these numbers that appear too quickly to be able to really understand. You can see what it says. It's like 0, miss, but it's just so fast. You can't get a grip on this. So I think what you need in a turn-based game like this is a combat log. So essentially, when I attack like this, what should happen, what's going to happen in the future, is that it says the damage numbers on top, but it also says the damage numbers here. I'm going to put like a combat log or something here that you can drag out the size that you want or something, or maybe down here. And then it says in the combat log, for instance, if it was a crit or something. So here only the numbers appear, and they appear pretty briefly. And if you're very interested in what actually happened, you can look at the combat log and say, oh, okay, he dealt that much damage because he critted, or I critted against him, or so on. So that's the next thing. Next thing, okay, the health meter needs 2 improvements also. First of all, it's not very clear how much health is left here. So I think it might need an amount of health that's left. So I think I need to remake the health bar. Also, probably the health bar needs to be moved because I want the game to be able to play the game from top-down perspective, and I might even lock the game to only be playable in a top-down perspective. I don't know yet, I haven't decided on that. But in that case, you can see the health bar kind of obscures the character under it. I need to move the health bar to be not exactly over the character, maybe a little bit under the character or something like that. It's a little bit hard to see how much health is left, and probably what I should do is add a guesstimation of how much damage you're gonna deal. So for instance, if you have a full health bar and you're gonna deal like 50%, the average of the damage that you deal to the skeleton berserker would be 50%, and it would show you that 50% is going to be lost from this character after you've attacked it, if everything goes as planned. Something like that. And okay, number 12 in why this combat sucks so much. Okay, so if you try and kill this guy. That animation, I guess it's fine that he just scatters like this, but it's a little bit boring, honestly. It's a little bit boring. And I think that's for two reasons. First of all, there's no sound in the game, so we need to have, to make combat work, I think we really need to have sound. And there's a little bit of screen check there, and he shatters. But it's not satisfying at all. There needs to be a dying sound. There needs to be a hit sound for when we hit them with the sword. There needs to be sound, is what I'm trying to get to. And then also I think that the effect when he dies needs to be a little bit more oomph. More oomphy. It's not oomphy enough. It's like, yeah, he just scatters away, but it's not... Oh, it doesn't feel right yet. So I think there's... Maybe if I add some particles or something, or like some essence that dissipates out of him, some black smoke or something coming out of him when he dies or something. There needs to be something more there for it to feel satisfying. Also, it doesn't drop anything. That doesn't feel good. So, how many things are we up to now that suck about the combat system? I think there's a lot. Let's try and fight this guy. These abilities that I have down here, and the healing ability, for instance, these are gonna go away. So let's see if we can defeat this guy. I think we have enough mana to use this. Triple attack a couple more times. I think we're gonna be able to take him down. But as you can see, we are losing HP. And there he shattered. We are losing HP. And how are you supposed to replenish HP? Well, I tried out a system first, because I've tried a lot of things. I tried out a system where, just as in Diablo, there drops health potions, but the problem is, in Diablo the health potion system works because you can always teleport back to town. In this game you're not going to be able to teleport back to town, so you need to find enough health potions. But it makes it so that it's almost impossible to balance the health potions unless you completely rig them. Because it's going to be like, either you're unlucky and you don't get enough health potions and you just die and you couldn't do anything about it, or you get enough health potions and the game is just easy peasy lemon squeezy because you just heal up to full all the time. So instead, what I think that this game needs is something that was very much inspired by Stone Shard, and also the fumble chance and everything there on the character was very much inspired by Stone Shard. So in Stone Shard, what you can do, and in a lot of roguelikes actually that have this kind of system, is that you can rest. So you can go and rest, but rest needs to have a cost. So, for instance, now after I've defeated these guys and I have not that much HP, I probably want to rest at this point. So then I can rest, but then there needs to be a system that handles so that you can't rest too much. Essentially, what you're doing is you're splitting up into the game into your short-term HP and your long-term HP. So the rest system handles it long-term until you get to a place, to a town or a vendor or somewhere where you can buy healing, or you get to some kind of place where you can restore the long-term health. What was I trying to say? So yeah, you're using the resting system to replenish short-time health, but then at some point you need to, of course, replenish the long-term health of your character. So that's what I'm going to implement. And my idea for this system, that's where this thing comes in there, faith. So my idea for this system is your short-term or your long-term, your short-term health is of course health. Your long-term health is going to be displayed down here. It's going to say sanity 100%. So if you have sanity 100%, it means that you're fine. Your long-term health is perfect. But as you rest the more you rest, your sanity goes down. And if your sanity reaches 0, you die, because it's, you know, it's your long-term health. So you need to keep your sanity in check. And the lower your sanity goes, you don't want it to go low, because else you would always, you know, use your sanity until you're down to 1%. But you want to incentivize people to not do that. So instead, what you're going to be able to do, or what's going to happen, is that when you go down on sanity, you get negative effects on your characters. So for instance, you might have a chance to miss. There might be thresholds. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this system. Or I might buff the enemies that they have a higher crit chance. It's going to get more and more difficult the lower your sanity gets on your character. And faith is going to be a stat which is meant to be able to somehow, and I haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to do this, mitigate the sanity loss. So if you have faith, for instance, I'm thinking the idea right now is that on maybe 1 or 2 places in a dungeon, there's going to be a shrine where you can pray to, and the more faith you have, the more sanity you're going to be able to restore at those shrines or whatever, statues or whatever you pray to. So then we have a way to replenish the long-term health, and it's going to be much easier to randomize the dungeons, because I just need to have like 2 places where, or 1 place or something where you can restore your sanity, or restores parts of it. And then it doesn't really matter in what order the player traverses versus the dungeon. He might even opt to skip out on a shrine and come back later and pray at it later when his sanity is lower, to be able to restore more sanity, for instance. So that's what the faith is gonna do. It's gonna have no real impact in combat, but it's gonna be able to make you restore more sanity when you pray, essentially. So that's the system that I've thought out right now. So in that case, I will be able to sleep here, for instance, and or meditate or rest or something here. But when you rest, of course, the enemies are going to be able to move. This fog of war that I showed you earlier, the reason that I created it now is that you can even see it a little bit here, that there's some fog of war here. The fog of war is then gonna shrink in on you while you rest, so you can't see that far, so enemies can essentially sneak up on you very close, because the enemies are going to, now they're just stacked thick and they're just waiting in room for you to come there, but later on they're gonna be wandering a little bit between rooms, and they might just bump into you and they might hit you while you sleep, for instance. So you need to find a safe place to sleep, and when you sleep you're going to lose a little bit of sanity, but then of course you can restore that later. So that's the system that I have in mind. And that's probably gonna take a long time to implement, I think. I mean, it's simple in my mind, but making that work and also making this balanced and making combat feel good, that could take anywhere from between 1 month and half a year. I have no idea how long that's gonna take. But I mean, the next thing needs to be making combat feel good, because I don't want to add more content. Like, sure, there's going to be more different biomes or whatever you call it. Like, there's not only going to be crypts that you walk into, you can walk into other places. Like, for instance, I thought about adding like a cathedral, inner cathedral and stuff like that, a little bit Diablo inspired. And there's going to be outdoors, maybe, stuff like that. But I don't want to add that before combat feels good with these basic enemies. And I don't want to add more enemies before combat feels good with these few enemies. I want to make enemies work with only skeletons and make it feel satisfying with only skeletons. And then, when it feels satisfying with only skeletons, I can add in more enemies, I can add in more items, more weapons, more biomes. Just adding content. I want to essentially make the game functional and somewhat fun. As fun as it can be with very little content, and then I can just add the content on top when we get to that stage. So that's going to be the next milestone. Man, it's already 20 minutes. Oh my god, I can talk way too much. Yes, there are some guys in here, but they're gonna kill us, so we'll just quit the game. If the game gets hard, just quit the game. That's just, I just how to do it in life, okay? Yeah, that was a very long update for not that much progress, but okay. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. See you hopefully tomorrow. Hello, Daniel! And you are?
It's me, the YouTube algorithm.
And well, what are you doing here?
I'm just here to take those views.
No, those are my views.
Oh, I can explain to you, senor. You see, you have subs 0% and non-subs 100%. That's why you can take all your views.
I guess it's time that you check out the little thing down there.